I think there's been an absolutely massive milestone when it comes to ICP lately. Nothing I say is financial advice, but we take a look at this right here. Dfinity recently posted how ICP just removed a major cryptographic bottleneck. And some of these aspects do include, for instance, 100 plus signatures per second burst capacity. There's a 10 times increase in chain key signing throughput. Furthermore, pre-signatures moved into replicated subnet state, which again may sound a little bit complicated, but what does this mean, right? Supposedly, it means faster cross-chain interactions. There's better performance for chain fusion, and keep in mind, chain fusion is an absolutely massive thing in terms of an achievement. And I thought that right there was pretty cool that we see something like this. Again, if there's better performance for something like chain fusion, I think it's pretty amazing. Furthermore, we take a look at infrastructure scaling for real-world apps. So at the end of the day, if we take a look at what I think just happened right there quite recently, this is massive. I don't know why some people like to tell me, oh, it still doesn't matter because ICP is below $3. Well, to me, it matters. I think all this stuff right here could really be so amazing, maybe moving forward for ICP, especially in terms of developers and in terms of enterprises. Maybe in the retail side of things, a lot of people just focus on the price, which I totally understand that to a large extent. But at the end of the day, I can't deny that I don't think this is a good accomplishment, because I think it actually is. I think it's a massive milestone actually in the grand scheme of things. I mean, again, if there's going to be faster cross-chain interactions, why is that a bad thing? Again, cross-chain, right? So if there's better interactions with other chains, why is that a bad thing? Not every single person only uses a certain chain. Sometimes they want to use others. So if there's faster interactions, again, cross-chain, right? I don't think it's a bad thing. Furthermore, better performance for chain fusion. Again, I don't think it's a bad thing either. If anything, if I also take a look at infrastructure scaling for real-world apps and seeing kind of how there's an improvement basically, why is that, again, a bad thing? If anything, I think what I saw recently was a net positive for the fundamentals of ICP. Because keep in mind, a lot of people like to tell me, oh, this space, it's going to have more apps and all this type of stuff. So if there is going to be more apps, I would only logically assume, right, that if there is a better infrastructure scaling for real-world apps, I think it's a good thing. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all, what I saw recently when it comes to ICP. I think this right here showcases that there's still things going on. But of course, the comments are always going to be like, oh, who cares about this? This is not a good step in the right direction. The price is still low. Why isn't this doing anything when it comes to the price? Well, here's the thing. What can they really do, like realistically, to this space overall in terms of the sentiment? Just make it randomly have like an altcoin season? I mean, I highly doubt ICP could ever do that randomly. Like in terms of what could Dominic Williams do, right? The founder of Dfinity, randomly command this space to go up? I don't know if he could do that. It's very unrealistic, right? So of course, when it comes to at a time when projects aren't doing the best, when the sentiment when it comes to altcoins are not doing the best, I want to be focusing on the ones that actually are still doing things. That's the way to take a look at it. The ones that didn't give up and the ones that kept persevering. So when people like to tell me, oh, this type of stuff doesn't matter. Well, again, I think it does matter, because if there's something that could hypothetically be better for its future fundamentally, I don't see why it's a bad thing. Keep in mind, a lot of projects out there prioritize, having improvements, in which case can allow for more developers to be more attracted to it moving forward, right? In terms of developers choosing that place for, building and just, I guess, doing things in general. But here's the thing, that type of stuff can't really come if the project doesn't improve and make the conditions favorable for these developers to enter. So if I see this right here, we have to think about how this is more of a long-term vision that I just saw, right? It's more so a long-term thinking mindset. So when we kind of sometimes associate that with a more short-term, I guess, mindset where why is it not doing much to the price of ICP? Why is the sentiment still not good? I feel like it's a different vibe. It's a mismatch, because this stuff right here, it's meant for the long term. When we take a look at this right here and we compare it directly to the price at being below $3, that's more of a short-term mindset in my opinion. But I don't view it in the same way. It's a bit of a different thing. It's like, for instance, cooking like chicken pot pie versus instant noodles. It's a different vibe right there. One takes more time, effort, and it's more of a long-term thing. in a sense, right? If I were to put an analogy on it. The other one is like instant noodles. Instant noodles, that right there would be the equivalent of a project like partnering up with a celebrity or an athlete or a musician or something like that. That's more of like a short-term mindset where we could very well see short-term effects when it comes to the charts in terms of the price. But things fundamentally, that affects the developers. But sometimes having more developers takes time, right? It takes like momentum. Furthermore, it also takes like sometimes word of mouth, right? Where other developers talk about it to other developers, but that takes quite a while. So I think what I saw recently, sure, it didn't do much to the price of ICP, but it's still, I think, amazing for it fundamentally speaking. So I do like that. If let's say ICP never sees $15 ever again, let's just say it only sees like $10 or $12, considering we're around like $2.50, if it could just go back to $10, which is like, again, we're around 4 times lower than that. Like, come on, right? I'm going to Sizzler at that point. But yeah, besides that point, when I take a look at the Internet Computer overall, I don't think it's a badly run project. I just think that it's a project that, as of right now, is kind of caught up in a market sentiment which isn't the best. However, if ICP is having a pullback, and also random projects that I've never heard of are also having a pullback, what do I want to focus on? Of course, I'm going to be focusing on the ones that I'm actually a fan of. It's like, for instance, if I walked inside a store and I saw a bicycle that had a discount, and then I saw a skateboard that had a discount, if my intent is to go there and buy a bicycle, why would I randomly, focus on the skateboard, right? Of course, if they're both having a discount, I'm going to be focusing on the ones that I do like. In which case, I like the bicycle, so I'm going to, acquire that considering it has a discount. Again, if a random microcap's having a pullback, if ICP's having a pullback, I'm not going to focus on the random microcap. I'm going to be focusing on ICP. This is just my mindset. But I am not telling anyone to do anything. However, in my perspective, like any project in the top 50, especially if the market were to recover, I just have a hard time believing it's going to randomly become like irrelevant randomly like that because, being in the top 50, it's not that easy. They already usually have an established following. Usually the fundamentals are already kind of there. Not to mention, usually it has pretty good listings. So when I take a look at ICP, currently ranked 48th in the world, yeah, I mean, still pretty massive. And that's like considering the market cap within this space, right? It's currently ranked 48th in that respect. So when I take a look at this right here, you know what? Dollar cost averaging at below $3 for me, I have zero complaints. That's the way to take a look at it. My kind of mentality is I sometimes don't want to be late, right? Because I feel like a lot of people usually care about something after all the good things have already happened, but sometimes they're not really a part of the journey. In which case, I mean, I get it because who usually wants to like things when it's not doing the best? But I've learned from historical, I guess, events within this space, right? Where who are the ones that are happier? The ones that got ADA, which is Cardano's native token, at around a couple cents, or the ones that acquired ADA at above $2. Now, personally for me, I'd be happier if I was able to get it at around a couple cents. But the thing is, back then, not that many people believed in Cardano, right? But the thing is, isn't that kind of the point to believe when other people aren't really believing? Because at that point, usually the charts are low, so the journey is still very far. But sometimes, again, I like to be part of that journey. I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but this is just the way I take a look at this as of right now. When it comes to ICP, sure, it'll never become like the best of all time, but it doesn't need to. Or even just go back to the sentiment that we saw, like let's say, I guess, back in November 2025, around that range. Like, I'm not going to complain at all. Like, for me at that point, I'm going to Sizzler. But that's pretty much about it for today's video. I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward if there are any, and if there's any news that comes along when it comes to ICP, I'll be sure to make a video on it. So hopefully y'all stay tuned for that. Again, I just want to say thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you all have a very nice day. I'm out. Peace. Bye.